Welcome back to the quick intro to Python 3 for AWS Automation Engineers course. In today's video, we'll cover the most common operations related to EC2 instances that you might need to automate using Python and the Boto3 library. To be able to repeat our examples, you'll need Python 3 interpreter, AWS CLI tools, Boto3 module, and IDE. We'll be using Cloud 9 IDE in this video, but you can use your local IDE such as Visual Studio Code, IntelliJ IDEA, or even a text editor. An Amazon EC2 instance is a virtual server you can launch in Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, or EC2, service for running applications on the AWS infrastructure. Amazon EC2 service provides a wide selection of instance types optimized to fit different use cases. Instance types comprise varying combinations of CPU, memory, storage, and networking capacity and give you the flexibility to choose the appropriate mix of resources for your applications. As soon as you launch the VM, you can access its operating system and configure it as a traditional, on-premises server. The main benefit of using Amazon EC2 service is that it allows you to automate the management of your virtual servers through the API. Amazon EC2 instances are a part of the AWS EC2 service, so you need these service APIs to manage them. To simplify this job for Python developers, AWS maintains the Boto3 library, which allows us to interact with AWS Services APIs by simply calling the required functions. The Boto3 library provides us with two ways to access APIs. The first one is the client that allows you to access the low-level API data. By using the client, you're getting API response in the form of the JSON structure. And the second one is the resource that allows you to use AWS services in a higher-level object-oriented way. For example, you need to access volume class attributes to get volume information. We covered this topic in the quick intro to Boto3 clients and resources video, so we'll not stay here for a long time. As soon as we instantiate the EC2 client or resource, we move forward and do some operations with EC2 instances using AWS APIs. Let's take a look at how to launch one or more EC2 instances in AWS using Boto3. You need to use the create instances method of the EC2 resource. The most straightforward EC2 instance configuration might include the following arguments: the minimum count of EC2 instances to launch, the maximum count of EC2 instances to launch, the AMI that will be used as a template for launching new instances, the instance type, which defines the CPU and memory parameters of the instance in addition to other instance optimizations, for example, storage and network, the security group, which is a stateful firewall configuration for the instance network interface defining allowed inbound and outbound network connections. And finally, the subnet ID parameter defines the VPC network to attach your EC2 instance to. Other parameters are optional, and we define several of them to cover the most common use cases. The key name parameter sets up the SSH key name you can use to connect to your EC2 instance using SSH or decrypt Windows EC2 instance password. The user data parameter allows you to automate certain operations when you're starting your EC2 instance. In our case, we're updating the YUM package manager database. And finally, AWS tag specification allows you to set up EC2 instance tags. Please review AWS API Developers Guide and Boto3 official documentation for other supported parameters. The create instances method returns a collection of instance classes that might be iterated using a regular for loop. The wait until running method of the instance class allows you to wait till the instance transitions to the running state. Additionally, we're setting up the instance profile role using the EC2 client. This allows you to grant AWS CLI tools and libraries installed in the instance to seamlessly interact with the AWS cloud using role permissions. We'll discuss IAM operations in one of our following videos. In our previous videos, we've shown how to use an EC2 client to describe required resources such as EBS volumes, snapshots, and AMIs and print all available information from returned JSON structure. This time, let's print only the required information, such as instance ID, state, MI, platform, type, and IP address. So, instead of processing JSON structure, we can use the Boto3 EC2 resource. As usual, we can query all EC2 instances using the all method of the instances collection. After that, we can iterate over the returned collection and get the required information using class attribute reference notation. Try to extend this script yourself to get additional information, for example, to print instances' private IP addresses. Of course, processing the entire list of EC2 instances each time is not efficient. Let's take a look at how you can filter them using specific parameters. In this example, we'll query only running EC2 instances and print their IDs. To filter EC2 instances, you need to use the filter method of the instances collection, which should contain a list of filtering conditions. You can have as many of them as you'd like, but for simplicity of the example, we'll use only one condition which filters by the instance state name. The rest of the script is straightforward. Let's take a look at another example of filtering EC2 instances by their type. This example is similar to the previous one with one difference. Here we're using the filter conditions which filter by the instance type. Another common use case for filtering EC2 instances is to filter them by specific AWS tags. To achieve this goal, you must specify the filtering conditions in the format tag, tag name. In our example, we're filtering EC2 instances that have a name tag equal to my EC2 instance. Finally, we'd like to show you how to filter EC2 instances by their IDs. In such a case, you have to use the instance IDs argument for the filter function, which expects one or more EC2 instance IDs. If you'd like to get all available information about one or more EC2 instances, you can use the describe instances method of the EC2 client. This method accepts the same arguments as the filter method of the instances collection of the EC2 resource and returns JSON information about all queried EC2 instances. You should be already familiar with the JSON datetime serializer method, which covers datatime values of returned JSON to string values. This allows the JSON dumps method to process the returned JSON structure and prints it to std out. Another common use case of working with EC2 instances using the Boto3 library is getting information about all EC2 instance EBS volumes. To accomplish this goal, you need to use the block device mappings list. This list contains JSON structures, each of which contains complete information about the EBS volume attached to the instance. In our example, we're printing all volume IDs attached to the same instance. To get an EC2 instance state, you need to use the instance class of the EC2 resource and get access to the state using the name key. At this point, we'd like to stop playing with EC2 instance attributes and show you how to manage EC2 instance tags. First of all, let's take a look at how you can add AWS tags to the EC2 instance. To achieve this goal, you can use the create tags method of the instance class. This method accepts the tags argument in the form of a list of Python dictionaries. Every dictionary describing a tag should have a couple of keys, the key specifying the tag name and the value specifying the tag value. The tags list can have as many tags as you'd like. As soon as you define a list of tags, use the create tags method of the instance class to apply it to the instance. As you can see, it's very easy to apply the create tags method to instances returned from the filtering operation. Similar to the processing of the block device mappings information, we can list AWS tags of one or more EC2 instances. But instead of the block device mappings, we need to access the tags attribute of the instance class. This attribute contains a list of Python dictionaries, each of which represents the AWS tag applied to the instance. Keep in mind that the list of tags might be empty if the instance does not have any assigned tags. To check this condition, we're using the len method, which returns the number of items in the tags list. Every dictionary describing a tag has two keys, the key representing the tag name and the value representing the tag value. To update the AWS tags of the EC2 instance, you need to use the create tags method of the EC2 instance class. This method will overwrite any existing tags with the tags list that you provide to it as an argument. To delete tags from EC2 instances, you can use the delete tags method of the EC2 instance class. Keep in mind that you can delete the EC2 instance tag based on its required key and optional value. If you specify a tag key without a tag value, the delete tags method will delete any tag with the specified key regardless of its value. If you specify a tag key with the value that equals an empty string, the delete tags method will delete the tag only if its value is an empty string. To enable detailed or advanced monitoring for the EC2 instance, use the monitor method to turn the monitoring on and the unmonitor method of the EC2 instance class to turn the advanced monitoring off. In our example, we're checking the instance monitoring state, and if it's enabled, we're turning it off, and we're disabling it if it is enabled. A not very practical example, but it definitely shows how you can use both methods. To start an EC2 instance, you need to use the start method of the EC2 instance class. Optionally, you can use the wait until running method to wait for instance state change before doing other actions with the instance from your code. To stop an EC2 instance, you need to use the stop method of the EC2 instance class. Again, optionally, you can use the wait until stopped method to wait for instance state change before making other changes with the instance from your code. Try to modify this script and take snapshots from one or more EBS volumes attached to the instance. At this moment in time, you already have all the required knowledge to do it. To reboot an EC2 instance, you need to use the reboot method of the EC2 instance class. This operation is straightforward, so will not stay here for a long time. To terminate or delete an EC2 instance, you need to use the terminate method of the EC2 instance class. If for any reason your script logic needs to wait till this operation completes, you can use the wait until terminated waiter method. To modify the EC2 instance type, you need to use the modify attribute method of the EC2 client. This method accepts the instance type argument in the form of a simple Python dictionary where you provide the instance type value. Pay attention that you can't change the instance type for the running EC2 instance, and you need to stop it before. As soon as you applied a new instance type, you can start the instance. Easy, right? To create a new SSH key pair, you need to use the create key pair method of the EC2 resource. This method will generate a new SSH key pair and let you save the private SSH key, the key material attribute. Please keep in mind that if you don't save your private SSH key returned by the create key pair method, you'll have to generate a new SSH key because AWS does not store your private SSH key. To list all SSH keys using Boto3, you need to use the all method of the key pairs collection of the EC2 resource and the for loop. The most useful properties of the returned key pair info object are key name, key fingerprint, and tags. Here's how you can do it. The key pairs collection of the EC2 resource allows you to use the filter method to search for specific SSH keys by key ID, name, or tag. Here's an example of filtering the SSH key by its name. This example is similar to filtering EC2 instances, EBS volumes, snapshots, or any other resources you're working with using the Boto3 library. Similar to searching EC2 instances, you can use the filters argument in the filter method of the key pairs collection to specify one or many AWS tags you'd like to use in the filtering operation. Here, we're searching all SSH key pairs for which the AWS tag name has the my SSH key pair value. To delete an SSH key pair, you need to use the delete method of the key pair class of the EC2 resource. The operation is straightforward. For practice at this moment, we recommend you write your own script which will generate several SSH key pairs and then use the filter method to find and delete them. Security groups control inbound and outbound traffic of the EC2 instance network interface. Each security group consists of one or many security group rules. Let's look at how you can manage security groups with your EC2 instances using Boto3 library. Please keep in mind that every EC2 instance must have at least one security group associated with it. If no security group has been specified during the EC2 instance launch, the default security group of the default VPC is associated with the instance. To define a security group, you need to use the create security group method of the EC2 resource. This method requires some mandatory parameters, such as VPC ID, group name, and description. Optionally, you can provide some AWS tags if required. To allow inbound and outbound traffic, the authorize ingress and the authorize egress methods are used. In this example, we're allowing SSH connections from port 22 and to port 22 arguments from all possible IPv4 IPs, quad 0 CIDR IP, for the IP protocol TCP. To list all security groups, you can use the all method of the security groups collection of the EC2 resource and then iterate over the result using the regular for loop. Similar to filtering EC2 instances by their IDs, you can find security groups by the security group ID. To achieve this goal, you can use the filter method of the security groups collection of the EC2 resource. To get all security groups properties, you can use the describe security groups method of the EC2 client that supports the same search attributes as the filter method of the EC2 resource. The returned result can be processed as a regular Python dictionary, and in our example, we're printing it as a formatted JSON data structure to the standard output. Similar to other Boto3 resources, you can use the delete method of the security group class to delete a security group. Now, let's take a look at how you can attach security groups to the EC2 instance. To achieve this goal, you need to use the modify attribute method of the instance class of the EC2 resource. This method accepts the group's parameter, which expects a list of security groups IDs. To list EC2 instance security groups, you can use the security groups attribute of the instance class of the EC2 resource and iterate over the returned collection using the regular for loop. There's no specific API call to detach the security group from the EC2 instance. To detach a security group from the EC2 instance, you need to get all instance security groups as a list, remove the required security group from the list, and modify or override the security groups of the EC2 instance. To wrap up our lesson on managing EC2 instances in the AWS cloud using Boto3 library, let's take a look at how you can manage elastic IP addresses. The elastic IP address is a public IP address provided by AWS that doesn't change when you start or stop the EC2 instance. In addition to that, the elastic IP address can be detached from one and attached to another EC2 instance at any moment. By default, each AWS account can allocate a maximum of 5 elastic IP addresses. To allocate an elastic IP address for your AWS account, you need to use the allocate address method of the EC2 client. The domain is the required parameter. In our example, we're allocating EIP to use it in the VPC. Optionally, you can define tag specifications to apply one or many AWS tags to the IP. To list and describe elastic IP addresses, you can use the describe addresses method of the EC2 client, which allows you to specify filters to search EIPs by various conditions including AWS tag, EC2 instance ID, network interface ID, and many others. Check out the official Boto3 documentation for all possible filtering options. In our case, we're getting all available information about elastic IP, which has the AWS tag name and it is equal to my elastic IP. To disassociate or detach an elastic IP address from the EC2 instance, you need to use the disassociate address method of the EC2 client. The disassociate address method requires the association ID argument, which you can find by processing the list of the EC2 instance network interfaces. And finally, to release an elastic IP address, you can use the release address method of the EC2 client. This method also requires an allocation ID, which you can get from the results of the describe addresses method execution. Now, as soon as you finish this course section, we strongly suggest you execute all provided examples to gain hands-on experience before moving forward. For more information about this topic, please check out the official AWS and Boto3 documentation. These resources are the most up-to-date sources of information. That's all we wanted to cover in this video. If you'd like to get more information about certain operations with EC2 instances or any other AWS services using Python and Boto3 library, please let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and press the like button. This will help us to publish and spread more educational hands-on content related to cloud automation for the community. Thank you for your attention and stay tuned.